Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for our cash tag segment. For that, let's bring in our next guest. That's going to be Megan Brantley, VP of Research at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. We've seen Coinbase stock do really well until about a month and a half ago here, Megan. We've seen some pullback. It's diverged a little bit from the price of Bitcoin at this point. But what kind of data are you guys seeing for this name? Because crypto's everywhere now.
You know, we kind of like this pullback that we've seen in the last month because we're starting to see our data diverge a bit. And so when we look at consumer engagement, you got to think we're really capturing, the retail interest here of, individuals who are going to buy, sell, manage crypto. And those engagement visits, those digital traffic is actually rising and it's accelerating. I think right now it's trending up about 30% year over year. But whenever you tighten that moving average, we like to look at the 90-day just to get a nice, clean, consistent picture. But when you tighten that up and just look in the last month, it's up about 43% year over year. And so this is a name where we see rising engagement. This is also a name where whenever you look at Coinbase versus competitors, and really relevant today with the Gemini IPO, this is the clear mind share leaders among consumers and when you think about total assets under management. So I think that or under custody, I should say, whenever we look at Coinbase, we actually see some nice trends in consumer traffic alongside this pullback. So we're starting to see a little bit of bullish divergence.
Megan, peripheral assets usually don't outperform the main asset. In this case, it's Bitcoin. And since late 22, Coinbase is up about 1,000%, Bitcoin up 640%. So right now, it's outperforming the main asset. And the main asset, you can say, whether you believe it or not, it's not my opinion, is a store of value where the other one makes money off trading of that asset. It doesn't, that chart, if you lay the Bitcoin chart over the Coinbase chart, that divergence that's starting, that's worrisome to a lot of people who see those numbers and say, this shouldn't be outperforming the underlying, which is Bitcoin. Do you have any data that suggests anything like that? Is that theory wrong, or is it a big red flag here?
I think that that's definitely a very valid theory, and that's something to keep an eye on. Bitcoin is certainly the most relevant asset right now in Coinbase's arsenal. However, I think it also makes sense whenever you listen to what Coinbase is talking about, how it wants to be, the everything platform, how it's diversifying, kind of beefing up its even stablecoin presence. This makes a lot of sense. It's trying to be a way that consumers can leverage and store all assets, even if you're not looking at a Bitcoin. But certainly that's a potential red flag moving forward. Just from our perspective, we do see a lot of traction and rising consumer engagement. And in our world, typically, whenever we start to see that tick up, usually the stock of Coinbase follows.
Megan, when you look at this, the competition's coming into the space where, you don't have to use Coinbase. They were the first one out there. They've got some different areas that they're diving into. They've made some M&A acquisitions at this point. But when you look at crypto and the correlation with Coinbase and the stock, I know that the Swan boys over at LikeFolio are pretty hyped up on crypto at this point. Is that the key for this stock moving forward, that, hey, Bitcoin's got to continue to move to the upside and crypto in general?
Yeah, I think that really is our underlying thesis whenever we approach Bitcoin and how we think about Bitcoin at large. And Coinbase is certainly a tertiary play on betting on Bitcoin. I think that the competition in the space, the near term, whenever you think about those implications, one thing that we do see in sentiment to note is that Coinbase has some higher fees. And so as competition like a Gemini and others become more popular with some lower fees, you could start to see those fees from Coinbase start to fall too. And so I think that that's another element to consider when you're thinking about this long term, because we know those trading fees are a large portion of Coinbase's revenue. So that's something to keep in mind. However, when we look at this, when we look at consumer interest in Bitcoin, when we look at institutional interest in Bitcoin, we see this as a long-term growth driver. And whenever we're seeing this consistent engagement, even accelerating engagement on the consumer front when it comes to Coinbase's platform, that gives us more confidence in this name, more confidence in this stock. And again, just that the bit of bullish divergence starting to form where engagement may be heading in one direction and the stock looks like it's heading in the opposite.
All right, great breakdown for us. Appreciate it, Megan.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, VP of Research at LikeFolio, giving us the data on